I was just going to give a little bit of background about myself, actually, which was actually back in the days of the last Conservative government, back in 1996. I used to work for Sage Accounting. I did a lot of work around contact management and that, and I got involved with computing for labour, and we redeveloped LPAC and things like that. And I got my first freelance job working for the Labour Party, which was taking huge tapes from the local authority with the electoral registers on them, and actually we had to then decipher how we would actually read these tapes and put them through. I used to go in at weekends, I used to do extra evenings and everything like that. I was really empowered by this idea of actually working for myself, actually, particularly when I went back, actually, I went back to work and they go, you can't work for the Labour Party while you're working here. And I thought, well, I should be free to do what I want, actually, and these skills are actually mine. So for me, my journey in self-employment started with the Labour Party, and that kind of inspired me, which I then went on later with the dot-com boom and everything like that. I actually went off and started freelancing myself. And around that time, I was really envisaged, as we all were in 1997, that the idea about creating prosperity and empowering people, which I still believe is what the Labour Party is best at actually doing. I was a bit disappointed back then when IR35 kicked in. Hopefully I don't need to explain to everybody in the room what that is. And then we kicked off on the tax avoidance. I was one of the founders of IPSI, and we got involved in actually doing the campaign to turn back IR35, which I didn't, 20 years ago, we didn't believe how successful we'd actually been until now. Actually, we realised actually it was a very successful campaign. But 20 years ago, we spoke to HMRC and we said, well, the problem is there's not enough case law around self-employment in existence, but hopefully over the next 20 years, lots of this will actually build up, and technology and all these changes in technology actually will be truly reflective of actually where we are. But of course, 20 years later, the problem we're at is that actually still isn't any good case law. And this has caused a problem for HMRC too, because they say they still can't determine, they think there's huge masses of non-compliance on IR35 and actually going around. And one of the problems is, with all this non-compliance going around, they've actually, instead of actually trying to change the rules, they've actually shifted the rules, as you probably all know, from being the contractor like me to actually decide, and it actually becomes the company, the client who's actually going to decide what it's going to do. Now, Labour Business actually turned and said, well, this is coming through with lots of people, this is a huge mess, what could we actually do about it? What could we actually recommend? We've done a report about 5 years ago called the Freelancing Agenda, which in that time was actually really just to highlight that actually freelancers are not people who actually need salvation, actually need saving from the world of self-employment, actually make huge contributions to the economy, and actually they want recognition, actually. And in this labour movement, perhaps we should actually look to move to organise. But anyway, I'm using up all my 4 minutes. So what we did is put this report together, and partly we looked at actually the mess we are in with IR35. And from last time, the creation of all these tax avoidance schemes, the creation of loads of umbrella companies which seem to spiral off. There's all this loan charge, people actually caught up in this whole scheme, which is actually part of the mess that IR35 created, because it's actually complicated tax, creating an industry of avoidance, which we're not interested in seeing. So what we proposed, I think in our last report about 4 years ago, was the idea of a freelancer limited company, which is effectively having a single person, you actually are an employee of that one company, but it's a bit like a community interest company. You found a limited company, then you go and you register it with the Freelancing Limited Company registrar, and you agree to have only one shareholder and have a fair salary dividend split, and actually then you would operate through this company as opposed to actually having the full range of a corporate company. That's what we put forward last time. IPSI actually picked this up, actually, and then they worked it up, I think, through it was Ernst & Young or somebody they actually got to work this through. I've got the wrong one, I can't remember who it was. It was EY, and it also went to the Office of Tax Implication, who also considered it, actually. And they might talk about it a little bit later. But these recommendations we put together, and I put a sheet on each of the chairs, actually, here. We felt that IR35, the rollout that we've had, wasn't very successful in the public sector, depending on how you've actually measured it. It hasn't been successful. we don't believe, nor does the CBI, nor do REC and others believe that it's actually anywhere near ready for an April 2020 rollout. That we may not even, it's not even gone through Parliament, God knows what's going to happen now and all of that. We think there's issues of liability unclear. The only people who actually want the liability for that IL35 are the contractors, and people are told that we can't actually carry it, and that's actually going to go elsewhere. We think all the supply lines are far more complicated, which I think AJ will talk about, actually, than actually envisaged, actually, for people who work about. I highlighted this in the report. We think that some of the, we think that HMRC generally needs to be more accountable. We think one of the recommendations in the report as we've looked at is that HMRC, there's no minister for HMRC. Why shouldn't there be, if you've got a minister for health and education, why shouldn't we have a minister for HMRC? Because these things aren't just about collecting taxes, it's about prosperity and people's lives. So we're pushing for that there should be an appointed minister who can be answer things like Google and Amazon tax and things like that to go through. And also we've looked at things like the CES tool and this IR35 forum and things, and we think these should be independent of, they should have an independent chair of government, and actually they should take over the governance of the CES tool, things like that, to actually make it far more transparent. But generally in terms of labour, I think the position we're kind of going with IR35 and the off-payroll workings, how can you tax people as employees and them not have rights, actually, because that's going to be the direction of travel. And it seems ridiculous that you can tax people as employees and actually not give them rights. So Phil's nudging me here, and I commend you, report to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Phil.